Good morning. Welcome to the Community Voice. I'm Steve Gredick, your host. Delighted to have you with us on this beautiful Monday morning. It's going to be a little wet this week, quite possibly, but we'll have more on that as time goes on. We'd like to wish everybody a happy Columbus Day. And hopefully next year we're going to revisit that show, as we tend to always do on Columbus Day. But however, today we've got a good friend of the station, the president of West Georgia Right to Life, Duane Haig. Good morning, Duane.
Morning, Steve. Thanks for having us.
We've been doing this now for quite a while, and while I appreciate seeing you, I would rather this would be over and we wouldn't have to talk about abortion on demand in America. But as part of West Georgia Right to Life, y'all do something called the Stand for Life, and I understand this is the 14th year of the Stand for Life.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about it, what it is, when, where, and what.
Okay, great. Again, we appreciate you allowing us to come on this morning. It is this coming Saturday, October the 13th, and we line up from 10 to 11 a.m., and that's over in front of Walmart on Highway 27 going southbound. Again, we're not in front of Walmart directly. We're up on the sidewalk by Highway 27 south. And so we try to form a line anywhere from Stripling Chapel. At times we get all the way down to Verizon, O'Charlie's, and that whole area there. So in past Stand for Lives, we've had anywhere from 75 up to 100 people from local churches come out and join us, youth groups, teen groups. It's just a memorial, Steve, to the over 60 million babies that have been aborted since 1973 here in America.
Understand it's a silent stand.
It is.
Y'all don't make any noise. You're just very quiet, and that's symbolic, is it not?
It is. I mean, we don't, throw apples at cars and make gestures. It is a solemn memorial. It's just a time of prayer, a time of one-on-one, just in memory of those aborted babies.
Now, I understand some of the signs you have. Let me run through some of these, and you might want to comment on a couple. Abortion kills children. Jesus forgives and heals. Adoption, a loving option. Lord, forgive us and our nation. Abortion hurts women. Pray to end abortion. And life, the first inalienable right. Yeah. What's the overall message there?
Well, we're just trying to bring across a message to the community. Those that drive by. One year we had an individual counting cars, and we had over 3,000 cars that went by. We're just trying to deliver a message. Number one, Jesus does forgive. He is a forgiving, loving God, and we understand that an aborted baby is in heaven, and we just want the message to get out to the community that there are other alternatives outside of abortion. And yes, we do have signs. Everybody holds a sign. We try to stay about 10 feet apart from each other to form that line. We just want the message of Christ communicated through our community.
Who's welcome to attend?
Everybody is. Everybody's welcome to attend. If you show up there about 5 till 10, we'll have signs available. We've got teen groups. This year we've got 3 churches that committed to have their teen groups and their young adults being with us as well, which is the first time this has happened. So we're excited about that because what we're wanting to do is plant the seed of life, within the younger generations. And our goal at West Georgia Right to Life is really three phases: education, it's exhorting, and it's engaging. And so we want to educate people. Our chapter goes out to local churches on a Sunday morning or a Sunday school and presents a pro-life message, very educational for the church and the community. We want to exhort the masses as well. We want to get them involved. Once they have education, it's power. We want them to get involved and uplift our Lord through this, and then also to get engaged. And this is part of the engagement, is getting involved with Stand for Life, getting involved in local churches and being an outreach. So it's kind of the 3 E's, as we call it.
This past weekend, we saw the swearing-in ceremony of Justice Brett Kavanaugh to the U.S. Supreme Court. The thing that struck me about that, as soon as he was announced as a nominee to the court, immediately the abortion debate arose. And even before you'd found out anything about him, the question was whether or not he was going to overturn Roe v. Wade. Mm-hmm. What was your thinking in that early announcement and those early reports about abortion being the preeminent issue, if you will, for this nomination.
All right. Well, we probably need an hour to discuss that, but
okay.
But there's a lot of moving parts behind that. First of all, West Georgia Right to Life is a chapter of Georgia Right to Life. So Georgia Right to Life has 40 chapters, 45 chapters across Georgia. And so what our chapter is, we are a local chapter of Georgia Right to Life. And Georgia Right to Life stand on endorsements for nominees or endorsements for any elected official is that there are no exceptions. Rape, incest, we are a no exception clause. And that does create some controversy. National Right to Life does have exceptions for rape and incest. The only exception that we have is the health of the mother. And so Brett Kavanaugh, in past discussions, did not lean toward the no exceptions. He did have some exceptions, which is also included in the Hyde Amendment. So there were some mixed feelings about Kavanaugh being elected and being confirmed as judge. But the one thing that we did learn, going through some of his past writings that he had, he was a dissenter of President Obama's, in the ACA law where it talked about late-term abortions. He was a dissenter of that, but then he was also stood by. I pulled up some information this past weekend about the Garza versus Hargan District Court circuit, and so he stood up for the Priest for Life versus Health and Human Services, and in that case, he ruled that he was against government intervention into religious beliefs and feelings. And so versus the personal side of it. And so we were, I personally was glad to see that he is an individual who's going to stand up for the rights of religious freedom. But then also he was affirmed and believed in the Hobby Lobby case as well. He sided with Hobby Lobby in that case as well. You got to understand, he came from the District of Columbia Circuit, which was the second outside the Supreme Court. The Circuit of D.C. is the second most powerful circuit in America. So, I have some hopes. We'll see. Time will tell how his rulings go. The interesting piece is now we've got Gorsuch, and now we have Kavanaugh. And if you look at the ages of Ginsburg and the other Supreme Court judge, they're 85 and 80. And so I think the left was concerned that Trump has one more opportunity potentially to bring in another Supreme Court.
And I can't remember his next choice was a woman, and I can't remember her name, but she was allegedly more pro-life than allegedly what Kavanaugh.
That's correct.
Could have been.
Yeah, she came out. She's a Catholic, and she had some very strong pro-life comments in some past writings as well. So, going back to your original question, I think the left, the liberal side, was more concerned about this because. And you and I talked in the past, follow the money trail. Where's the money's coming from? Right. In the United States government, our tax dollars, $550 million, are going to Planned Parenthood every year. And so by putting somebody in there that potentially could limit abortions, could create and side with other laws that could be constructed and possibly slow down that business for Planned Parenthood, it was a huge piece. There was an executive vice president of Planned Parenthood came out just before Kavanaugh was nominated. And she said, "We oppose the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court and call on the Senate to do the same. There's no way to sugarcoat it. With his nomination, the constitutional right to access safe, legal abortion in this country is on the line. We already know how Brett Kavanaugh would rule on Roe v. Wade because the president has told us so." And then National Abortion Foundation called Kavanaugh an extremes judge. Kavanaugh tried to block an undocumented minor in the government custody from exercising her constitutional protected right of abortion. And if you drill in a little bit deeper, you'll notice that she was an illegal immigrant in America.
Right.
And he was pushing for her to get parent consental right in order to look at even having an abortion. So some of his undertones, you can tell that he would be a little bit right-leaning towards the abortion cause.
Of course, there's no guarantee when anyone's put on the Supreme Court as to what they will.
Well, you look at Judge Roberts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I want to come back and we'll talk more about the exceptions under the umbrella of personhood. And if you'd like to, we're on Facebook Live this morning, News Talk 1330 Facebook page, and you could also call us 678-601-TALK. And we'll be back with more with Duane Hack, President of West Georgia Right to Life, after this word.
At Tanner, we're advancing health throughout West Georgia and East Alabama because we know that exceptional care isn't based on how many patients we serve, but how well we serve them. That's why we're focused on quality, delivering the best possible care for our patients. It's why we're expanding our clinical services and building new facilities to serve our growing community. And it's why we're looking beyond our hospitals and medical practices to develop sustainable wellness and preventive health programs in our region. What makes a hospital great has changed. It's not how many beds we have. It's how well we care for the neighbors who need them. Delivering the right care to every patient, every time, is how Tanner is advancing health with medicine beyond measure. Learn more at tanner.org or find a physician on our medical staff by calling 770-214-CARE.
Good morning. Welcome back to the Community Voice. I almost forgot the name of the show, but that's what happens when you get older. My name's Steve Gradick. I'm your host. Delighted to have you listening. And you can also watch us if you want to see two old guys behind microphones. That's on Facebook, News Talk 1330. And we're talking to Duane Hack, and they have the 14th annual, 14 years. Stand for Life coming up this Saturday, right?
That's correct.
10 to 11. At the Wally World Shopping Center. I forget the name of it. On Highway 27 South. So you kind of referenced it in a way, in a roundabout way, in talking about exceptions and how Georgia Right to Life doesn't really or does not embrace the exceptions, rape, incest, life of the mother. But really, life of the mother is the physician would go in to save both child and mother. So there's really are no exceptions per se. But that comes under the umbrella of personhood. And what do you mean by the term personhood?
Well, you and I have talked about this several times, even on this show in the past. The new battle cry for the Right to Life movement is all about personhood. And it goes back to a decision, Roe v. Wade, where Justice Blackmun came out in his dissent. But he said if there was ever a time where the baby in the womb, the fetus in the womb, can be considered a person, then all of a sudden it just flips the table on Roe v. Wade, because now they are guaranteed under the Constitution. And Steve, the 14th Amendment says, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction in the equal protections of the law. And so I think we can get to that point where the fetus in the womb is now called a person. All of a sudden it's got protections in the 14th Amendment. And we've seen some of that starting to percolate. In 2010, there was some legal review topics, and it talked about fetal personhood, the legal theory that a fetus has the same rights. And even President Trump, in the ACA bill in 2017, it kind of went unnoticed until you really drilled in a little bit further. But in the bill of 2017, you saw the first inclination that personhood is starting to percolate within our laws that we build, and it talked about it in the Tax Cuts and Job Acts of 2017, and it said it's specified that an unborn child may qualify as a designated beneficiary under the 529 bills. And so again, the 529 is a savings plan that you can develop for a child. And it basically,
college.
All right, it's a college fund.
Right.
But in this bill, it specifically calls out that this section modifies the exclusion of the student loan discharges, but it now allows that an unborn child may qualify as a designated beneficiary. So, for instance, my daughter and my son-in-law, let's just say she's pregnant. and she has the child in the womb, she can designate funds for that child in the womb as a person. And so you're starting to see some of that migration of personhood. It's really going to be our marching orders going forward. And what we've seen is even in the abortion laws concerning personhood, just in the last 10 years, there's been more pro-life, pro-person legislation produced than in the last 15 years. In 2016-17, there were 57 abortion-restricted laws placed into law that either included personhood or included a pro-life mantra. So we're making some great strides, and personhood is going to be our banner going forward.
So just to be clear then, personhood is a term you're using to say without exception that the life in the womb is that of a human being.
That's correct. It's a person.
It's a person.
Because if you can ear link it to the 14th Amendment, then all of a sudden that babe in the womb now has the rights of the Constitution. Mm-hmm. Whereas right now it's not called a person. It's called a fetus. It's called tissue. I mean, there's a lot of other words. But if we can ear link it to person, then all of a sudden it's protected by our Constitution.
And fetus, though, is Latin for unborn child, correct?
So, yeah.
And in the first inalienable right, one of your signs on Stand for Life says the right to life is first in the Declaration.
That's correct.
So one thing I wanted to review, kind of shift gears if we could, and I think this is of interest, regarding communist China. Since 1971, China has had 336 million abortions, 196 million forced sterilizations, and 403 million IUDs were implanted. And this is part, and then the one-child policy that we've all heard about in China was implemented in 1980, and then that was facilitated by, soon thereafter, the invention of the ultrasound machine. And supposedly, during that time, China has collected $319 billion in extra child fees for the government treasury there. But staggering figures, which dropped China's fertility rate down from 5.8 down to 1.7 by the year 2013. And then in America, we've had since 1973 60 plus million abortions in this country, and that's not necessarily a complete number, in that as I recall, there's some states that don't report.
That's correct. Yeah, the CDC, you can go on and you can look at two different sources. You can go to the CDC website. You can also go to Alan Guttlemeyer. He's a pro-choice, I guess, statistic person.
Associated with Planned Parenthood.
Right. AGI is what it would be. And yes, he is kind of working under the umbrella of Planned Parenthood, but he kind of says the same things as well, that New Hampshire doesn't record. There's one other state that doesn't record. The District of Columbia only turns in partials. So 60 million is probably a conservative number because we don't have the true factual numbers, and same as in China as well. When you look at China's statistics, 336 million abortions. That's just the abortion side of it. That doesn't count the 196 million sterilization process or the 436 million IUDs. And so when you look at that whole piece there, they're saying that, and again, when you look at the statistics produced by the China Federation of Parenting, or Parenthood it's called, you kind of wonder where those numbers are. Are they massaged? Or are they just on the low side? But, 13 million abortions a year, which is 35,000 abortions a day. And then you look at America, well, we've got, 1.3 million abortions annually, or 3,600 a day. Now, again, the populations are different. Over in China, you've got 1.6 billion people. Here in America, you have 325 million people. But when you look at it based on population percent, that's 1% of the population have gone into or have had an abortion annually, where in America it's 0.4%. So you can see the difference it makes, by having that forced abortion in China. And then it's also, too, when you kind of drill down a little bit, the statistics, and I read this at 3 different sites, that said that if they didn't enforce the no second child law, that the population in China would be 30% more than what it is right now. So you can see the reason why the numbers are skewed in China is there's 34 million men in China versus women.
More men.
Yeah, more men than women. But when you look in America, we've got 126 million women and 119 million men. So the emphasis is really strong as far as creating the male to do the work, to work in the fields, work in the factories, the government-owned factories, and it's a human disaster when you look at the fines that are levied against these people. They have provinces like we have states. So in China, you've got different provinces. You got Hunan, Henan, and there's another one which I don't even want to try to attempt to spell out. But 30 to 50% of their household income is levied if there's a fine for having that second child before the law was enacted in 2015. So 30 to 50% of their household income, and they have to pay 50% of their household income up front. And then once the abortion occurs, then they get some of those funds back minus the cost of the abortion, doctor's fees, administration. So there were some really strong, heavy fines. And we've talked about it in the past, too, about eugenics, Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood and all that. Well, in two of the findings that I found, and the one was in the Financial Times and the other one was in Family Research Council, where they've had people on the ground, they've had interceptions, and said that if the husband or wife have any sort of congenital defect, it's in the opinion of the Provincial Medical Board that those folks are unfit to produce and undergo sterilization. If they're pregnant, they must be terminated. And so you and I have talked several years ago about that whole medical board process.
Right, which is part of ACA.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about the medical board process and the aged, and I'm sorry, but, instead of giving you a knee replacement, we're going to give you 2 aspirin and hope you feel better. I mean, I'm not saying we're going down that road, but are we going down that road?
Well, in a way, we already been down that road with forced sterilization in America that took, I think it was 7,000 women were forcibly sterilized in 20s and 30s and up to 1970s in North Carolina. That I guess that's the point is, can America go down the same road that Communist China's gone down, and how horrible and tragic that would be. But here we are. It's taxpayers funding Planned Parenthood, so maybe it's not such an outrageous thought. Anyway, we're going to take another break. We'll be back with more with Duane Hack and Stand for Life with the West Georgia Right to Life after this word.
At Tanner, we're advancing health throughout West Georgia and East Alabama because we know that exceptional care isn't based on how many patients we serve, but how well we serve them. That's why we're focused on quality, delivering the best possible care for our patients. It's why we're expanding our clinical services and building new facilities to serve our growing community. And it's why we're looking beyond our hospitals and medical practices to develop sustainable wellness and preventive health programs in our region. What makes a hospital great has changed. It's not how many beds we have. It's how well we care for the neighbors who need them. Delivering the right care to every patient, every time, is how Tanner is advancing health with medicine beyond measure. Learn more at tanner.org or find a physician on our medical staff by calling 770-214-CARE.
Good morning. Welcome back to the Community Voice. I'm Steve Graddick, your host. I want to play for you. There's a movie coming out October 13th this week. It's Gosnell, the movie, and here's the trailer.
We're looking for paraphernalia. Police department, we have a search warrant. What's that smell? I see this. I've never been in an abortion clinic before. You are not going to believe what I saw last night.
How many?
So far, we found over 30 in them. Healthy woman goes into a clinic, comes out dead, and there's no police report? Files have been moved recently. Look at this. You'll be
be the prosecutor who went after reproductive rights, and you'll be a racist to boot.
You've got a lot of folk who'd like to see abortion outlawed. And this is not going to be the case that gives them an excuse.
The prosecution has offered you a plea bargain, Dr. Gosnell.
But I would have to admit I was guilty. I'm not guilty.
When you get to the courthouse, you are going to be swarmed by reporters.
You ready for this, counsel?
Where's everybody?
When was the last time your division inspected Dr. Gosnell's clinic?
We had instructions directly from Governor Ridge's office not to inspect.
We can testify in that case about anything. You doubt you'll find a doctor who will.
When you look at the facts, you will see what I see.
An overly zealous Catholic investigator. Is that what you want to make this about?
There's nothing that man did that protects women or children, and you don't have to be a pro-life activist to see that.
Kermit Gosnell is perhaps the most prolific serial killer in American history.
You better win.
And that's going to be, I think, showing in Hiram and Douglasville.
All right, listen up. We're looking for anything that looks...
They say he was the most prolific serial killer in American history. That's a pretty strong charge.
Yeah, it is, but again, you go back, that's all human life that he took, and you go back to the Planned Parenthood videos that were shown a year and a half ago, and you see all through those videos, you know, Steve, we've talked time after time, go back through the money trail and see the money that's generated by the Planned Parenthood organization, and you see where all that starts through, and you have to go back and think through, you know, what's a life worth? You know, the first trimester abortion ranges anywhere from $225 to $275 for a life, and you know, Lord have mercy on us as a country. You know, from where we've gone to, and 60 million is you know, it's a number, it's a large number, and I always, in our presentations, we do the churches, Sunday school hours, I always talk about using a map of the United States and going back from, you know, in your mind visually, if you can think of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, put that in your mind as a map, and that's 60 million people that have been aborted since 1973. It's a travesty in the nostrils of our Lord. Personhood, we talked about it. The right of every person shall be recognized, which is in the first place the viable right of every innocent human being, the right of life. And so that's what our mantra is going to be. And you're going to hear a lot about that over the next year, couple of years, as far as personhood going forward.
Okay, review for us again, Stand for Life this Saturday.
Yes, sir. Again, our 14th annual. I think I started visiting with you when we were on number 5 or 6. So it's our 14th annual Stand for Life this Saturday, the 13th, from 10 to 11. We'll be on Highway 27 South in front of Walmart. We'll be standing up, forming a line there. It's a silent vigil. It's a silent memorial to the 60 million babies that have been aborted since 1973. Please invite your church groups, youth groups, young adults. We'll have signs. We'll have everything you need. We just need you to show up and help us be in prayer for those innocent human lives.
And it seems like the overall, and we've only just got a few seconds left, the overall mindset of America is turning more toward a pro-life position.
Yes, sir. I saw a chart this morning. In 1979, 29 out of 1,000 pregnancies were aborted. And last year's number, 14 out of 1,000 pregnancies were aborted. So we've cut the amount in half.
Our guest this morning has been Duane Hack, president of West Georgia Right to Life. If somebody needs more information, how should they contact you?
Sure. You can call my cell. It's 470-370-2452. 470-370-2452, or go to wgrtl.org. We got a website.
We've run out of time for me to give my cell phone out, so so we're going to have to say goodbye. We thank Tanner Health System for sponsoring our program this morning, and go out and make it a great Columbus Day. You're in tune to WLBB Carrollton.